A vital element in keeping the peace is our military establishment. Our arms must be mighty, ready for instant action, so that no potential aggressor may be tempted to risk his own destruction. Our military organization today bears little relation to that known of any of my predecessors in peacetime, or indeed by the fighting men of World War II or Korea. Until the latest of our world conflicts, the United States had no armaments industry. American makers of plowshares could, with time and as required, make swords as well. But we can no longer risk emergency improvisation of national defense. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. Added to this, 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. We annually spend on military security alone more than the net income of all United States corporations. Now, this conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of nothing for granted, only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together.
Welcome back to another episode of the Kyle Lanslone Show, and I am very excited today to have Kelley Vlahos returning to the show. Of course, you are the editor over at Responsible Statecraft, one of the most important outlets for speaking truth to power when it comes to foreign policy. Kelley, welcome back to the show. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much, and thank you for that opening and introduction. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Kelley. You do some of the best work writing all over the place. Responsible Statecraft, the American Conservative. So let's get into it today, Kelley. We got a lot I want to talk to you about. Trump and Hegseth meet with the generals. Trump's peace plan for Gaza. Some updates on the Nord Stream bombings. I know you've been covering this all along, so I definitely want to get your take. And tomahawks to Ukraine if we have time at the end. So, Kelley, starting off here, I have a clip of Donald Trump speaking to the generals at this big summit that Pete Hegseth, our Secretary of War, had. So let's play this first clip, Chris.
San Francisco, Chicago, New York, Los Angeles. They're very unsafe places, and we're going to straighten them out one by one. And this is going to be a major part for some of the people in this room. That's a war, too. It's a war from within. Controlling the physical territory of our border is essential to national security. We can't let these people in. We're under invasion from within. No different than a foreign enemy, but more difficult in many ways because they don't wear uniforms. At least when they're wearing a uniform, you can take them out. These people don't have uniforms. And I told Pete, we should use some of these dangerous cities as training grounds for our military, National Guard, but military.
So, Kelley, I mean, for years, people have been warning that eventually the wars are going to come home. Is that what Trump is basically announcing here, that we're going to see maybe some of the same things, some of the same horrors that our troops have conducted overseas coming to American cities?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly sounds like it. And I'm pretty flummoxed because I feel like this really feeds in to the panic and the paranoia on his left flank. You know, the Democratic opposition has been talking about the coming fascistic scourge. This has been a narrative that's been pushed and developed since his inauguration. And so when he goes into a speech and he says the enemy within, talking about using U.S. citizens, U.S. cities as training grounds, talking about, it sounds like enemies that don't wear uniforms right here in the homeland, that only feeds into that paranoia and that fear that he is going to wage war on a certain segment of the American population. And as a libertarian thinking person, obviously that makes me a little nervous too. I mean, our founders, we founded this country based in part on our chafing against standing armies and a monarchy, and the idea that the U.S. military would be garrisoned in these American cities, and not only garrisoned, but training and conducting some sort of exercises against the American people. That makes my heart go a little flutter. I don't know how serious to take this. I don't know if he's speaking to his base, which wants to hear tough talk on immigration. I don't know why he would take it that far, because he is doing a lot of work on the border right now. We have troops amassed on the border. He's shut them down. I think the American people are appreciative that he has taken border controls so seriously. But when he gets into the realm of seeing the American people as part of the problem, as part of this amorphous enemy of some of the tactics that ICE has used, deporting people before giving them a fair hearing, for example. Poll after poll is showing that Americans didn't want that extreme level of approach, that they wanted the restrictions, they wanted the law to be observed, the current law, the immigration laws observed, but they didn't want to see that at the risk of constitutional rights. And they certainly are not keen on having the U.S. military come in and sort of, become sort of a law enforcement arm of the White House. And obviously that breaks existing law like posse comitatus. But it doesn't seem like the Trump administration really fears crossing lines, constitutional lines. They're rather will cross them and then face legal consequences later. That's not helpful, because he could cross lines and put obviously constitutional rights in jeopardy, and then how long for things to go through the courts or to stop what he's doing. I'm a little concerned, I guess, is the short answer.
Well, yeah, I'm very concerned about this too, Kelley. And it does seem that we've gotten to a point in, this, I think, erosion over time, but it seems to be happening much quicker. And, I remember back maybe almost 2 decades ago now, I read Judge Napolitano's book, Constitutional Chaos. And he was basically warning, if you erode what the Constitution stands for, eventually it's going to be meaningless, and then presidents will just be able to do whatever we want. So we seem to have gotten there. And also my concern is that, we've seen with the immigration policy where he came in with a real mandate to crack down on the immigration problem. And I think that was a legitimate concern of Americans. I think, the immigration open borders had gone way too far under Joe Biden. Likewise, I do think when Trump came into office in 2024, there needs to be more of an emphasis on law and order in this country. It doesn't necessarily mean that I want people arrested for smoking pot on the street corner, but there is just a lot of kind of petty theft and crime that's going on. And I mean, I have a kid now, so now when I see it, it horrifies me. I'm like, oh my God, I got my kid here. What am I going to do? There's a crime going on. And so I get why people wanted Trump to impose law and order, but we have massive police forces in this country. Why the hell is it the National Guard or the military that we're going to deploy to do this?
Right. And I don't know how much of this is performative, Kyle. I'm an open-minded person, and I understand everything that you just said in terms of the mandates that were there when Trump came in to office. So I'm willing to set aside some of the initial sort of panic, like the first blush panic that, when I see a president talking about sending the military into cities, because this is Donald Trump. He does a lot of things for show. And he sent the National Guard into Washington, D.C. He ostensibly took over the Washington, D.C. police force. But honestly, I haven't seen a lot of fallout from that. I know that people who live here are not happy. But I look out my office window every day. I come in on the metro, I go to restaurants, I go to Capitol Hill. Don't see a huge military presence here. So I think a lot of it was for the media. A lot of it was for Trump saying, hey, I told you I was going to come in and fight crime, and this is how I'm doing it, because he has this military at his command, and it looks tough. It looks extravagant. It looks like he's doing something. And I think many people watching this right now will say, well, that's not what my taxpayer dollars are for. And I really don't like that kind of performative action. But I do think that there is a difference between, the showman and the extravagance and the bombacity that Trump tends to engage in, and real constitutional violations. And I am concerned that he is moving in a direction in which he's using our military for things that he's not supposed to. And I'm hoping that at some point there will be the levers of justice will come in and say, you cannot do this. When he gives these speeches and he talks blatantly about how he is going to use American cities as military training grounds, I mean, I can't imagine what was going through the minds of the generals and admirals in the audience, because they know, they are committed and obligated to uphold the U.S. Constitution. They're not committed and obligated to uphold Donald Trump. And so I would imagine there were ripples of concern in that room, and everybody was very stone-faced because they know the cameras were on and they don't want to be seen as like rolling eyes or, showing any exasperation. But yeah, this isn't good. And again, Kyle, this comes at a time where he's signing executive orders for the use of military force against narco terrorists and drug cartels. And so he's identifying new enemies every day. And those enemies include people and groups overseas, but potentially people and groups here in the United States. At what point does he say, well, this narco terrorist, this cartel is operating through channels here in the United States, in Chicago and Los Angeles and New York City, and so that I need to use military force on the homeland against these identified narco terrorists. I'm very fearful for, and as well as these proposals to outline a new authorization for military force to go after drug cartels. That news came out within the last 2 weeks. So all of this coming together makes me a lot more nervous. If it was just the performative stuff, I'd say, okay, it's Donald Trump. But there are policy moves being made here, and that should concern all of us.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. I hope it's performative. I know every day I see Idris Ali, he's Reuters Pentagon reporter, posting how many yards of mulch the National Guard in DC put down, because a lot of what they're doing is apparently landscaping right now, which I don't think we should deploy the National Guard to do landscaping in American cities, but I do understand there are much more destructive things that they could be doing. Now, Kelley, I have one more clip of you to play. This one is Hegseth addressing the generals, and I think this probably had them pretty nervous and concerned.
If the Secretary of War can do regular, hard PT, so can every member of our joint force. Frankly, it's tiring to look out at combat formations, or really any formation, and see fat troops. Likewise, it's completely unacceptable to see fat generals and admirals in the halls of the Pentagon and leading commands around the country and the world. It's a bad look. It is bad, and it's not who we are. Today, at my direction, every member of the joint force at every rank is required to take a PT test twice a year, as well as meet height and weight requirements twice a year, every year of service. Also today, at my direction, every warrior across our joint force is required to do PT every duty day.
So, Kelley, is the problem with the U.S. military that we just have too many fat generals and admirals, and it nothing to do with the thinking, nothing to do with the policy? They're just a little bit out of shape, and Hegseth's just the guy to get them running and get them on a diet.
I mean, I have to say this was the least concerning aspect of his remarks. I think I'm with Pete here. I think that there are a lot of things that have gone by the wayside in terms of our military standards, the culture, and honestly, we have an obese country. There is a large percent of kids who would otherwise be eligible to join the military who cannot because they are obese and out of shape. And so I think for all of the, and I don't want to get in trouble here, but for all of the focus that have been on social engineering within the military, there has been less of a focus on physical standards, unless you're in the special forces. So that's like a whole different ballgame. But I agree with Pete. I think back to basics. There's nothing wrong with back to basics. There's a lot wrong in the military right now, and you could do an entire show on the reforms that are required to get us back to a proud institution of military defense. Physical standards, definitely one of them. And I have no problem with him calling out generals and admirals as fat. I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah, I guess I was more just disappointed, he didn't talk more and speak more to the fact that it's not only that, but the thinking and what the Pentagon is doing on a daily basis, that's really what needs to be addressed. Now, if this was a part of, we're going to tighten our ship all around, including our belts, then that's one thing. But it seems like, he is, and I think this is kind of representative of what we've seen from the Trump administration. A lot of it is just aesthetics. He wants to look out and see a bunch of buff men and women, just like Trump wants pretty girls to be his press secretary and, cut men like Hegseth to be his secretary of war. Like this is I think kind of a defining trait of the Trump administration. And unfortunately, there's no substance behind it. It would be one thing if it was that plus substance, but there's a real lack of the substance.
That was my greatest disappointment with the remarks yesterday. So I think I had a lot of issues with the way that Hegseth portrayed the ultimate result of the restructuring of the military. It was all about not just the aesthetics, but it was about this war fighting ethos in which no longer we defend the nation. We focus on going out and killing and breaking things when necessary. And he broadcast this sort of video game image of what this war fighter might be. It's like these super soldiers that just get like unleashed out of a box whenever necessary, and they go out and they create enormous violence and damage in the name of protecting the United States, and then they're put back into that box, and they have nothing to do with anything but the kinetic So he says, we are going to only focus on the M, the M. He said that several times, meaning the military. Okay, I get what he's saying at a certain level. He's saying we don't want our military to be used as police officers in the world, nation builders, social justice warriors, development people. We're not going and remaking societies. That was at the foundation, the failure of our 20-year global war on terror, is that we were trying to remake societies in our own name. So I get that. But the way he's describing it is just like, but all it will be is killing and bloodshed and retribution. And I thought that was very caricatured. It was very superficial. There was no substance to it. And as somebody who has been advocating for military reforms, like you mentioned, in the thinking, in the standards, and finding ways to promote the right people and not be so highly politicized and not have so many admirals and generals, but have good ones when we do. And to fight the corruption that is like woven into every aspect of the institution. He talks nothing about that. It's all about the video game. And it sounded like it was almost an appeal to a certain Gen Z generation aesthetic. Like, you too could be part of this elite group of killers. But it didn't give me, the American taxpayer, any confidence that the Trump administration really wanted to do the hard work of reforming the military across the board and in every area that is necessary. I'm all for re-examining, some of these social engineering programs. He call them woke and DEI and all of these training programs that gum up the works and keep, I'm all for like re-examining all that. It's important, and I'm sure you can get Doug McGregor on this. He's the best person to talk about this. But nothing like that was conveyed in his remarks yesterday, which I thought were very disappointing.
Yeah, it seems to be a common theme, Kelley, where there's legitimate complaints the American people had, like, hey, our military shouldn't be a testing ground for social experiments. Like, we're not going to integrate it and have a whole bunch of trans stuff in our military as a way of showing the American people that trans people are that's not what the military is supposed to be. And I think almost every American probably looks at that and they say, yeah, we agree. But once again, they just absolutely miss the mark. Now, Kelley, before I move on, I do have to take a quick second to thank the sponsor and mention the sponsor of today's program, and that is the Expat Money Summit 2025. This is a fantastic online annual event put on Mikhail Thorpe and his team at the Expat Money Show. They help you craft your perfect plan B if you want to move abroad. Where you could buy foreign property abroad, how to get a second passport, what's your tax situation going to be like if you have a residence overseas and you're still an American citizen making income in the United States. So all those questions and more will be answered at the Expat Money Summit. It is coming up this month. We're now in October, so it's the 10th through 12th, and you could go to expatmoneysummit.com to reserve your free ticket to the event. If you want a VIP ticket to the event, get some extra panels and things like that. I will be on one of the VIP panels along with frequent guests of the show, Dave DeCamp. Use the promo code Kyle, Kyle, when you check out to save yourself 20% off. Again, that's expatmoneysummit.com. All right, Kelley, I want to move on now and ask you about the Trump-Netanyahu relationship. We just had the fourth meeting between Trump and Netanyahu of his second term in the first 9 months of his administration just this week. And right after that meeting, and Trump unveils this peace plan for Gaza. He's proud of it. He says it's going to end the conflict almost immediately. This is what Benjamin Netanyahu had to say.
Instead of Hamas isolating us, we turned the tables and isolated Hamas. Now the whole world, including the Arab and Muslim world, is pressuring Hamas to accept the conditions we set together with President Trump to release all our hostages, both the living and the fallen. While the IDF remains in most of the Gaza Strip, who would have believed this? After all, everyone kept saying you have to accept Hamas's terms to withdraw everyone. The IDF needs to withdraw, and Hamas can recover and also rehabilitate the Strip. No way, that's not happening. On the contrary. And President Trump added that if Hamas refuses, he will give Israel full backing to complete the military operation to eliminate it. And that's why I think, from every perspective, this was an excellent visit.
Many in the government, there's a question being asked. Did you agree to a Palestinian state?
Absolutely not. It's also not written in the agreement. But one thing we did say is that we will strongly oppose a Palestinian state. President Trump also said that. He said he understands that. He also said at the UN that it would be a huge reward for terror and a danger to the state of Israel.
So, Kelley, I mean, Trump, embraces Netanyahu, gives Israel everything he wants, and then he comes out with this peace plan, it seems, immediately after. Netanyahu's already undercutting it. What do you think of Trump's relationship with Netanyahu at this point?
Well, I'd like just to take 1 second just to go back to what we were talking about, because I see in the comments somebody talking and comparing Hegseth's warrior ethos with the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces. And that was another thing that struck me, was how Israeli it sounded, this warrior ethos that Pete Hegseth seemed to be describing for, it was at least 20 minutes he was on stage talking about the lethality, the killing, the breaking things and leaving. I think that is an important point to make, that we have people in the Trump administration, not all of them, because I know there's some really good people working there. We have some people in the Trump administration that want to emulate the national security approach and strategy of the Israeli Defense Forces and the Israeli government. So I think we should keep our eyes open for more of those examples, because I do feel like that there are people who think that we should be more like the Israelis, which is just they're going around and bombing people we don't like, and sending forces into places that we don't, and into places in going after people we don't agree with. On your point about the relationship with between Trump and Netanyahu, I think it was my friend Max Blumenthal who had said, pay attention to what Netanyahu says in Hebrew publicly to the Israeli people, not what he says with Trump on a stage in the White House, and not even what he's saying privately to his friends, but what he's saying in Hebrew. And, if that's the case, we're in trouble, because basically what he was saying is that he did not agree at all with Trump's plan on very key specific issues like Palestinian statehood and withdrawal of Israeli forces. And I think we need to take that very seriously. I believe that the last few days of the news cycle, talking about this plan, talking about who's supporting it, whether or not Hamas will agree to it, is in essence a waste of time, because I don't think the Israelis are serious about this. And I'm just not sure where President Trump's head is at. He doesn't look happy when he's sitting there in the White House with Netanyahu. He looks pained, and he looks like he's saying things he doesn't really believe, but it doesn't matter. This war continues. People continue to die, and the humanitarian situation is getting worse. And in no place in their remarks, either Bibi Netanyahu or Trump, did they actually talk about the Palestinian people in any way other than, if they don't get with the program, they'll deserve whatever happens to them. And that pains me as an American, because I don't think things are going to move forward. And I think a lot of this, again, is performative and a waste of time, or at least buying time for Netanyahu to actually finish the job in Gaza, which is horrifying.
Yeah, Kelly, one of the things that I think has been a little bit positive out of all of this is there's been a lot of people on the right half of the American political spectrum. And I know that's a very broad group of people, but real meaningful voices in the movement. Andrew Napolitano, Daniel Davis, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, yourself and some of your colleagues over at Quincy have all been extremely critical about how subservient that the U.S. has been to Israel during Trump's presidency. Tucker Carlson went as far as to call it a humiliation ritual, which I think is an absolutely brilliant way to describe it. I think it really, kind of hits the nail on the head, where we're enacting policy that's actually detrimental to Americans solely for the benefit of Israel. And do you see any indication that this kind of right-wing movement that's building against the endless support of Israel is creeping its way into the White House or Capitol Hill, or really anywhere where people have power to stop or to put some kind of dent in the special U.S.-Israeli relationship?
I'm not so sure about that, but I can say safely that one of the things that I've seen that have shown that this movement on the right is having an effect is how the Israelis are reacting. And in the last week, you have seen Benjamin Netanyahu looking all sweaty under the collar, talking about how they need to get TikTok. They need to spend millions of dollars on influencers. They have to build cohorts of influencers who are going to promote and inject pro-Israeli content. They need to help AI learning to be more pro-Israel. They have to infect algorithms. They have to, basically condition the American people to be more supportive of Israel. I do not think they would be acting this desperate if they didn't see the writing on the wall. And that writing on the wall are the polls that are showing this real radical decline in support for Israel, not only on behalf of Democrats, but across the board, and especially with younger people. And so they're on the run right now. And but that's not super good news for us, because Trump is about to sell TikTok to a consortium of billionaires who are all pro-Israel, and not only pro-Israel, but want to actively promote Israel within the mainstream media, on college campuses, and across platforms. And they see this as a battle. And Netanyahu talked about TikTok being a weapon and the arsenal. And so these billionaires like Larry Ellison and Safra Katz, Jeff Yass, and Rupert Murdoch, and more, they're ready for battle. And I do think that this is a direct response to them seeing their support slip, particularly on the right, which had always been so firm and in their pocket.
Yeah. Well, my concern, Kelly, is just what Israel is going to do in response. There is a really good and important article at the Quincy Institute now by Nick Cleveland Stout. I believe it's his last name. And it's about how Israel is going to effectively be paying influencers like $7,000 a post, but also how they're going to try to manipulate the Chat GPT responses. And I think this is like particularly nefarious and dystopian and really concerning to me, that they are talking about moving down this road. That article will be the spotlight tomorrow at antiwar.com if people don't catch it at the Quincy Institute. And I hope to have Nick on the show sometime soon, because I really want to talk to him about it. But
Yeah.
Kelly, I mean, how far would the Trump administration let Israel go in burning down our First Amendment to protect their public image?
I don't know. I mean, I'm just so disappointed. And I think, you talked earlier about some of the people on the right who have been frustrated and have been talking out vocally about U.S. support for Israel. And I think it is important because people like myself, people here at Quincy, folks at the American Conservative, antiwar.com, and other conservatives, really had an open mind and confidence, whether at different levels in a new Trump administration coming in and making good on a lot of the promises he made about getting us out of endless wars, and bringing troops home, not keeping them stretched too thin and multiple deployments, not using the military for interventions that can't be explained to the American people. And instead, in the last several months, we've seen, everything we've talked about so far in terms of this aggression against narco terrorists on one hand, but most importantly, this real inability to put his foot down with Benjamin Netanyahu, to use the leverage that the United States has to stop the war in Gaza. So on one hand, he says, I'm the president of peace. I want to stop the war in Ukraine, which again, that hasn't happened either. And I also want to bring peace to Gaza. He said those things over and again during his inaugural speeches and in the month following. And instead, the one thing that he could do, which is stop the flow of weapons from the United States to Israel, which would have an immediate impact on their ability to keep this war going, he won't do. And nobody knows why. Nobody knows why he won't do that. He won't use any leverage. And instead, he doubles down by continuing to bring Netanyahu here with the red carpet treatment. Yeah. And so I don't have a reasonable explanation for you, because the Trump that we know, and if we take his words seriously, is tough. He's a deal maker. He doesn't let anybody take advantage of him. He looks people square in the eye and he tells them what he's going to do. And he's done nothing like that with Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, you could say he has an ideological fealty to the Israeli cause, but I haven't heard that either. I haven't really felt that he is a true believer in Zionism, that he believes that there should not be a two-state solution, that Israel needs to bomb everybody in the neighborhood to get its way. I haven't really heard that either, so it's vexing.
Yeah, the closest thing to an ideological perspective he seems to have on it is just he wants to have the title of most pro-Israeli American president ever, which is an insane title if you want to be America first. Excuse me.
Right, exactly. If you want to be America first, you don't spend all your time being Israel first. And again, I think that has really gotten under the skin of a lot of MAGA, particularly younger people who joined the movement, the populist movement, populist conservative movement during 2016 and have been loyal supporters of Trump, the right. They really bought into this idea of America first. And in part, they bought into the idea that we are not going to be the world's policemen, that we aren't going to get into silly, endless wars anymore. And so when they see the president sort of, A, being wobbly on all this stuff, and B, putting another country's interests before ours, that it just doesn't square. And so I think that plays a big role. And that has nothing to do whether Candace Owens or Tucker have big audiences and, social media, yada, yada. These are principles that people in the movement bought into, and they don't see them being fulfilled in this new administration. And it's causing them to think twice about Israel and that special relationship. So I don't know if Larry Ellison buying TikTok is going to help Israel. What would help Israel? They just stop killing people in Gaza and end the war. What would help Israel is if Trump finally puts his foot down and he says, Bibi, I'm not going to give you any more weapons. You're going to have to fight this out yourself. Stop the war and let's move forward.
Absolutely. Kelley, thank you so much for your time on today's show. I only got through like half of what I want to cover, but your insights are so fantastic. I always have to ask for follow-ups. Everybody, make sure you are reading Quincy Institute Responsible Statecraft every single day. They
Yes.
have just some of the most important commentary, and you do news stories there too, and cover news and stuff like that. So really important stuff at the Quincy Institute. It's one of my first stops every morning. There's an article from Responsible Statecraft linked on the front page of antiwar.com every day, because it's the stuff you got there is just that important. So Kelley, thank you so much for your time, and I hope to have you back on the show again in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you for all the work that you and antiwar.com do. I mean, I'm the biggest fan.
Thanks, Kelley.